Does the beginning of the story of Hero start with My Church, or does it start with another song?
If I remember correctly, the first song I wrote that ended up being on the record was maybe Drunk Girls Don't Cry. If I had to guess, it was in that batch of songs. I didn't write My Church until I went to LA to write with Busby for the first time in that capacity. And we got My Church and 80s Mercedes in the same week. And I remember that being kind of like in the middle of the road, just album wise. And then the rest of the songs, yeah, I mean, it was sort of a patchwork of years before I was an artist or ever signed that I was just collecting songs through. But yeah, I would have to say like Second Wind or Drunk Girls Don't Cry were maybe the first songs that were written, but not in the headspace of me being an artist yet, if that makes sense.
Blows my mind to think you really were not entertaining a career as an artist when you moved to Nashville.
Yeah, I think because I grew up in Texas doing shows, and I guess in a smaller sense, being an artist as a child, I was touring and all over the state and doing every like chili cook-off and talent show you can think of. I think by the time I reached my early 20s and wanted to move to Nashville, I was very burned out on the idea of being on stage and being in the spotlight and having that pressure of commanding a stage. It just didn't interest me anymore at that point in my life. And so writing songs for other people was what I wanted to sink my teeth into. And I also sucked when I got to town as a co-writer. I had to learn how to write with other people, which is what Nashville is so about. So those first few years were really just me in the trenches, honing in on my songwriting and writing with anybody that would be in the room with me. And thank God that ended up leading to some of the people that I'm still close with and write with today, like Laura Veltz and Jimmy and all of those people. But yeah, I didn't have the interest to just be back on stage again for probably 4 or 5 years. And then I wrote My Church, and it just kind of rekindled this this flame in me of wanting to be the one on the microphone, because I just I couldn't hear someone else singing that song. I think that's the song that broke the levee was My Church, because I felt very protective of it and wanted to sing it myself.
Wow, it's cool to hear about sort of what an integral part of that early conversation Busby was, and obviously he left his mark, on this earth through a lot of beautiful music, but particularly I think in this album. And production-wise, I think it still is set apart from what was happening around it. I think if you turn on even Sugar, Sugar into Rich, you're like, this isn't like anything else that's happening in Nashville at that time, whether it's male, female. And I think it was so set apart in its own way. And I'm curious about how that happened. Was that just y'all? Did you know you were doing that, or were you just being yourself with some of that carefree spirit you were talking about earlier?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, with Rich and Sugar, those were written without Busby. So him just being a producer on those songs, I think he was trying to match the energy of the demo. And with Rich, like I wrote that with Laura Veltz and Jessie Jo Dillon, and it was just us and a guitar. So he really had free reign to build on top of it and make it as crunchy and like bombastic sounding as possible. So, yeah, there's this weird dichotomy of production elements on that album, just re-listening to it with fresh ears yesterday. Sugar and Rich and, like songs like that are really like they're in your face, but the production was really reserved for like what I do now, or at least I did on Girl. I think whether his name's on it or not, I will always have a piece of Busby with me when I make music. And I'm just so excited to sort of, I think that not only shook me up, it shook the town up of like how fleeting our plans can really be. And just make music that makes you happy. Don't do it for the chart. Don't do it for the streaming zeros at the end. Like, just do it because it makes you happy, because you really don't know when your time is up. And I think that going into my third record has been the motto is just approach it like you did your first, where there's just no expectations and no one to excite but yourself.